Hey everyone, this is David Pike, the Motorcity Mechanic. In today's video, we're continuing with part 2 of our 4-part series on the shortcut method of removing and replacing the oil pump assembly on a front-wheel drive 3.2 and 3.6 liter Pentastar engine. So in today's episode, we're going to be dealing with the electrical portion of the pump as far as getting it back through the block. We're going to be talking about the special socket that makes the shortcut method possible. And we're going to actually remove the pump, put it on the bench, cover some of the important details, and go ahead and prep and get ready for installing the pump back onto the block. Now the tensioner just slides on a peg right here on the oil pump assembly. Now there's not enough room to take this off currently with the oil pump still on the engine. So we'll leave it on and we'll separate it once we get the oil pump unbolted and removed. Now being that that oil pump has an electronic solenoid on it, that means that there's wiring going to it. And that wiring has to enter and exit the block somewhere. Now, what we're looking at right now is a front-wheel drive vehicle with the passenger side CV axle. This is a 2-piece axle with a support in the center. Right next to that support, this section of harness goes to a connector. That's the connector that leads to and from the oil pump. On a rear-wheel drive vehicle, you may have an alternator in this location, but nonetheless, on a front-wheel drive, it's easiest to go ahead and take that passenger side CV axle assembly off so you can get to it a little bit easier. Now I went ahead and took the CV axle off this engine so that I can show you better how the connector releases and how this metal retainer right here slides onto the portion coming from the oil pump. You don't have to take it off, but if you do, it's going to make it a lot easier. But nonetheless, the fact that I took it off means I can show you how both of those work. That way, if you're going to fight with it with the CV axle still installed, you'll know exactly what you need to do. Now the connector itself has a single stage lock, so all we've got to do is squeeze in on it and lift up and reposition it. Now we've got access to the portion that comes from the pump. Slides through the block and has a metal ring that keeps it secure and in place. All we've got to do is grab it either with some needle nose pliers, or after you've removed the CV axle, if you've gone that route, you can grab it with your fingers and pull it off. Now you want to keep this, just in case the new one doesn't come with one, or if you're doing a repair and you're not replacing the pump but you're taking it off for some reason, you're going to need this. I do see new pumps come with them, but just in case, there's no harm in keeping it. Now if that metal retainer removed, you can see this plastic finger right here. Now this is part of the plastic connector, and the way it works is it's actually pulled through from the inside out. Once it's fully extended, that finger latches in place and keeps it from going back inside. So in order to push this down inside, we've got to squeeze in on this. Also, there's an O-ring to help seal the connector to the block so we don't have any oil leaking out. So we probably need to soak this down with something like WD-40, and then we can squeeze in on this and press down and insert it back inside the block. So go ahead and spray it down, get a good amount everywhere, let it soak in. So grab whatever tool you can find that will reach up in there and squeeze that finger tight up against the body of that plastic housing. And get you something long and narrow to help push on it. Anything that'll fit, anything that'll work. Kind of wiggle the plastic piece and then push it down inside the block. The oil pump itself is bolted to the block with a total of 4 10mm bolts. We've got 2 of them here and here, and we've got 2 more back over in there. So let's go ahead and start getting these 2 off right here. Just grab you a 10mm socket, either a cordless tool or a ratchet, and back them off. Now the last 2 remaining 10mm bolts that we need to take off for this pump are located down in here. Much like they were on the other side, where they're in the same general location, but the problem is that the aluminum oil pan kind of hangs over it. And they're basically located right about here and here, but directly up underneath. Now this is where it becomes a little bit difficult. Now in order to get there, we need some special tools or special sockets, let's put it that way, so we can reach those 2 10mm bolts. Now the whole secret to being able to do that shortcut all boils down to a special socket. Now we don't have a lot of room because the aluminum oil pan is overhanging the pump and those two 10mm bolts are tucked up under there. So we need something to get up in there. And we don't have a lot of room to get a wrench, so we need a socket. In this case, we're going to use a swivel socket. I've got a snap-on here on my left and I've got a brand called Astro on my right. Now they both serve the same purpose. They're 10mm swivel sockets, 1/4-inch drive. But the problem we run into is we're tight on space. So any ability to find a shorter socket will help benefit us. So in this case, if you put them side by side, you can see that the Astro is about 3/16 of an inch taller. So what we need is something a little bit shorter, and that's where the snap-on comes in. Now the part number for the snap-on is TMUSM10A, and I'll put that up on the screen. Brand new, the price is around 45 bucks. But you can find them used online, so just Google that part number and see what comes up. Now 45 bucks sounds expensive for just a small socket such as this, but you got to think about what it's doing. It's saving you a lot of time, and we also have the possibility of exhaust bolts breaking off on that section of the exhaust we've got to take loose. So 45 bucks, in the end, the tool is going to pay for itself. Plus there's other jobs that you can use this on eventually, such as if you've got a 2004 Grand Cherokee and you're trying to take the fan shroud off, this will get in there as well. So it works for multiple applications. I don't necessarily say buy a whole set of these, but if you just need the 10, purchase that one. Go online. Like I said, you can find them used probably around 35 bucks and then new all the way up to 45 bucks. But once again, this tool is a must-have when it comes to this shortcut. So go ahead and grab that special socket, an extension, and some kind of ratchet. Line it up and take it and break it loose. Now back it all the way off. When you get to the end, grab you a magnet of some sort, grab a hold of the bolt so that way you don't lose it. Now we're going to repeat the same procedure on that last 10mm bolt. Just back it off. And go as far as you can, and when we get to the end, once again we'll use that pocket magnet to grab a hold of it so that we don't lose it. Then once you've got it backed all the way out, grab your pocket magnet, pick it up, and pull it out. Now with the electrical portion pushed back through the block, we've got those 4 fasteners taken loose, chains off. We can go ahead and pick up on the oil pump assembly and remove it from the engine. So now we can see what the oil pump looks like up close. We've got the electrical connector here that we push through the block. We've got the shaft for the oil pump that's got a flat area that is keyed for that gear. And we've got the tensioner right here for the chain. Now when you go to replace the pump, you're going to have to remove this and place it on the new pump. And all it does is just slide right off. The key thing to remember is when you slide it back on, to make sure that the spring is on this side of this peg. That way you get the tension that you need to. Now it does have alignment holes so you could put something through it, a retaining pin of some sort. But because we didn't take the upper portion of the aluminum pan off, we don't have the clearance to get up in there. So all we did was insert something into this recess to pry it out of the way. So going back with that, we'll do the exact same procedure. Now right here where the pump bolts to the block, you can see we've got an alignment dowel on both sides. So there is no way to get this installed wrong. Line it up, tighten it down. So that's what those are there for. On the back side, you can see the solenoid, and this is also where the pickup tube goes. And before we install the pump where it needs to be, we're going to start with routing the electrical connector through the hole right here in the side of the block. Now we don't have a lot of wiring to work with, so all we can basically do is just get it inserted into the hole, just enough to get it in there. Then we can set the oil pump in place and tighten down the bolts. And then we can reach from the other side with a pair of needle nose and pull that connector all the way through. And also we have access from this back side to actually help push it through as well. And before we go inserting this connector through the hole in the side of the block, I want to point out that there is a correct way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it. You look at it, there is a flat area on one side and it's curved on the other. the block has a matching ledge. So when you insert this through, it should be lined up with the cutout on the block. If it's not, it will not fully seat because the curved portion will be overlapping that flat section. Also, before we go installing it, I recommend getting a little bit of wheel bearing grease and smearing it on the O-ring. That way it'll be a lot more easier when you try to push it through. So grab your replacement pump, make sure that that tensioner is installed correctly and you've got that spring on the correct side of the peg. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to grab the harness. We're going to hold on to that tensioner at the same time, but we're going to grab the harness and we're going to find the hole and we're going to get it started. You're not going to go all the way through, but you're going to get in there enough just to protrude through the hole. Now that it's there, we'll go ahead and sit the oil pump onto the block and we'll line up those alignment dowels with the holes. Make sure it's fully seated, and we'll go ahead and grab some of the bolts and hand tighten these right here. Now, if you're replacing the oil pump with the engine still in the vehicle, you're going to have to hold the pump in place while you get the bolts started. Just run them down by hand. Once they're snug in place, grab the other one and do the exact same thing. And then, once that's tightened down, you can go ahead and let go of the pump and let it sit there so you can go ahead and get ready for the last two remaining bolts. And when we go to install the two 10mm bolts that are a bit difficult to get to, you're going to be working overhead. So there's a combination of different tools that might work best for you. Now, we already got that 10mm socket with the swivel end on it on a 1/4" drive. A 10mm wrench might help get that bolt started. We won't be able to use it to tighten it down, but it'll help get a few threads going. Also, we could use a magnet to hold the bolt up in there while we're using that wrench. And also, yes, some kind of paper product, toilet paper, paper towel, anything like that. And I'll show you why I recommend using this and how we're going to be using it. And that pretty much wraps up part 2 of this series. Now in part 3, the things that we're going to touch on are installing and torquing down those 4 oil pump to block bolts. And we're going to be installing the gear drive and chain, and also we're going to work on installing the pickup tube. Now if you like this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you got any comments or suggestions about anything you saw in today's video, you can email me at david@motorcitymechanic.com. Also, if you like to shop on Amazon, please make sure you use the link that's in the description below this video. And any purchases that you make will help support this channel. Once again, everybody, thanks for watching.